For those of you doing the Sinclair Method or considering it, I wanted to share this comment that I got on my YouTube channel that I think is very important for a lot of people to be aware of as they embark on this treatment to drink less alcohol. So they say, I've been doing the method for 5 years. For the most part, I'm blown away by the success I've had, but it's the old habit of Saturday nights after work that kill me, and I overdrink even on the pill, meaning naltrexone. I'm totally aware of the fact that I'm displacing my work stress and I need to retrain my habits, but it's hard. But I will never not have naltrexone on hand for the rest of my lifetime. I can't go back to being a slave to vodka every night. So this challenge that the individual expresses about seeing major progress in alcohol reduction, yet still kind of being hung up on that Saturday night habit where they're clearly using alcohol as a coping tool to cope with stress. This is such a common challenge for a lot of people. And I would even say that, teaching ourselves new coping tools through this process, we're seeing ourselves drink less. But as we drink less, we have more free time. That doesn't necessarily mean all the stress and difficulties of life go away. And so what I see happen to a lot of people is their desire for alcohol is less. Their craving for alcohol is less. And when that happens, they have more control generally when they drink. But the challenge can still come in when, they have a powerful trigger like stress and they turn to alcohol still to use it as a coping tool, even though the craving or urge isn't as strong. And a lot of people, when they're using alcohol to cope, can do what we call drink through the naltrexone medication, which means they've got naltrexone on board. They may even notice that it's giving them an off switch. So maybe they've had a couple drinks and they don't really want more, but they keep drinking anyway, essentially to get the numbing effects from the alcohol to kind of turn off our brain. And this, I think, is one of the hardest parts of the method, to be honest, like delinking alcohol as a coping tool and teaching ourselves other healthier ways to cope. The reason that this is still a challenge for people on naltrexone is because naltrexone has been shown to work to blunt the endorphin or the euphoric effects from alcohol. But if someone is drinking to sedate themselves or numb out or just turn off their brain, they can still get those effects from the alcohol, even with naltrexone on board. So this is why it really does become important to consciously learn new ways to cope with stress and difficulties in life, outside of naltrexone and the Sinclair Method, because if we're not doing that, we can still be stuck in habitual patterns of relying on alcohol as a coping tool and still really even getting some of that benefit of alcohol as a coping tool. Now, for me personally, and for a lot of other people, learning other coping skills and changing habits is so much easier to do when we use the Sinclair Method and naltrexone. A lot of people describe it like naltrexone is giving us space in our mind so that we're not just in a place where we're just fighting a craving all day long and saying, don't drink, don't drink, don't drink. A lot of us, the craving just quiets down over time on the treatment. So we have this mental capacity and space to think, I don't really feel like drinking right now, but I've had a stressful day. What else can I do instead? And for me, one way that I found really helpful for my own TSM journey, I was a daily drinker. So I had so many ingrained habits in my life as a daily drinker for nearly 10 years. It just touched every area of my life. And again, learning new coping skills was really probably one of the most challenging parts for me on this journey. And something I did to kind of help myself to gradually learn other coping skills is I would not take drinking off the table that day. Let's say it was Friday, I had a stressful week and I wanted to drink that night. I would say, okay, I'm allowing myself to drink, but first I'm going to have to, make sure I'm eating a delicious, nourishing meal, maybe something that's really indulgent. I had a cheeseburger and a milkshake a lot. And I told myself, okay, let me try this coping skill first. And if I still want to drink after that, I will. So I started to interrupt that typical pattern that was playing out. And I would give myself the chance to practice a new coping skill first. Again, maybe cheeseburger and milkshake isn't the best thing to do, but for me, in my mind, it was better than drinking a bottle of wine. So I would, allow myself to have that indulgent treat, or I'd go get a massage, or I'd go watch a movie, or go hang out with friends. And for me, that was like a small step that didn't feel overwhelming. Like I wasn't taking alcohol off the table completely. I was just delaying it a bit. What I found oftentimes is that after I did that other coping skill, I wouldn't really feel like drinking anymore. Again, because of the power of naltrexone and the Sinclair method to kind of gradually remove those cravings and compulsions to drink over time. Sometimes I would feel like drinking and I would allow myself, but just by consistently interrupting the routine, it really helped me to change these drinking habits and coping skills. But I will say this is not an easy process. There's a lot of things we have to go through that are really uncomfortable emotions, especially if we've been used to just numbing them out for years or decades. And so while naltrexone and TSM makes this a lot easier, there's still difficulty that we have to push through. I like to talk about it as if we have like this coping muscle that by leaning on alcohol for so long, it's become incredibly feeble and weak. And over time, as we practice new coping skills, our muscle becomes stronger and stronger, and we become more resilient, and the less we feel the need to rely on alcohol. But this was difficult for me, and a mantra I always told myself through TSM was the only way out is through. Like, I had to remind myself that I'm not going to become someone who's empowered over alcohol and has genuine control over alcohol unless I practice becoming that person. I have to go through these difficult situations and not rely on alcohol, because to me, and I think what a lot of people want on TSM, is we want to be a normal drinker. We want to be able to take it or leave it when it comes to alcohol. Maybe we drink a few times a month or a few times a week, but we don't feel the need to overdrink or drink more than that. And so in order to get to that place where we have this control back over alcohol, we honestly have to exercise that control. And again, naltrexone and TSM makes it so much easier because the compulsion and craving to drink is quieting down, and we notice ourselves just having more control. But we still have to, again, find different ways to spend our time, find different ways to cope, cultivate different hobbies and habits and things we like to do. Something people will tell me a lot of times is they'll say, what would I do if I had all of this free time if I wasn't drinking anymore? So many of us spend so much time thinking about drinking, recovering from drinking, that just the thought of drinking a little bit less, opens up more free time for us. And so if that's kind of been, for me, it was my purpose, my passion, my hobby, to be honest, to drink, because I just spent all my free time doing it. I didn't really know who I was or what I like to do outside of drinking. And so it was a process of rediscovering hobbies, kind of allowing myself to feel uncomfortable emotions and challenging myself to, try new things and be vulnerable. This is why we often tell people this is a long-term treatment. We say give it a year, you might get there faster, it might take even longer. But having that mindset that this is going to take time, because we didn't learn alcohol use disorder overnight, we're not going to unlearn it overnight as well. And for many of us, again, we just find that alcohol touches so many different areas of our lives that as we go down this journey, I tell people it was like an octopus for me, where it had all these tentacles in all these areas of my life, and one by one I had to pick off all these tentacles where alcohol had been touching my life. I was drinking to celebrate, to cope, when I was bored, when I was on vacation, when I was in nature, when I went to my nephew's birthday party, when I was home alone. Like, again, daily drinker, so every single occasion called for a drink. And so I had to kind of rediscover who I was and what I like to do and how I coped with stressful times without alcohol. Now with TSM, moderation and moderate drinking is a goal that most of us have going on this treatment. So this doesn't mean that we're talking about giving up alcohol for good and you can never touch it again. But again, to become someone who's empowered over alcohol and has your control back over alcohol, it means that you don't have that, knee-jerk response like, oh, I had a bad day, I need to go home and drink, or I'm going to get drunk tonight. Like, that's not someone who has control over alcohol. And one other thing I will say is that I would often ask myself, what would a normal drinker do? And that question just helped me throughout my journey to kind of shape my behaviors around what I thought a normal drinker might do in that situation. So I hope this information is helpful to you. As always, if you want to get started on the Sinclair Method or get more support, we have a private online program centered around this treatment here at Thrive. You can learn more about it with my other videos or the link in my profile. Thanks for watching.